The following announcement has been paid for by the nOw.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another, well, really, a relaunch, if you will, of the nOw podcast, the Nerds of Wrestling, and we're back here tonight with part of the rotating crew and cast and guests. Look at these nerds indeed. Well, you'll get a visual of me if you're watching back on YouTube or Twitch, but otherwise this is meant for audio, which you can find us on audio platforms. Your favorite one, search for Dose of Nerd Acumen. You'll find the nOw podcast available on there. Again, this is a relaunch of this, so this is episode 1, and I'm with Cody and Trevor, both members of the roster of nOw, which you can find every Tuesday, every Thursday on twitch.tv/Dose of Nerd Acumen. So welcome, Trevor. Welcome, Cody.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Let us know, to listeners who are here live with us on Twitch as we record this, if the audio levels are terrible or if they need any adjustments. So we didn't really have like a layout or anything, and this is kind of against how I've done everything from day one, and Locke in chat right now on the broadcast can attest to this. Generally, I have some sort of flow on how things will go. Well, today, we're just kind of winging it, and that stresses me out just a little bit, but I think it'll make for a fun relaunch of the podcast. So I want to pitch a question to both of you guys to kind of get to know who you guys are and why you're here today. And really the question is, what got you into the world of pro wrestling and why? Whoever wants to kick things off, introduce yourself, and then answer that question if you can.
Trevor, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. When I was younger, I'd like go over to my grandma's, and she'd always have WCW on, and I never really was into wrestling at first, and then I'd be watching it when I was over there, and that got me into it, and then I watched WWE for the longest time, and never really watched WCW until like the NWO. I'd watched it once in a while before like Raw came on, catch that first hour of Nitro.
So Grandma got you into wrestling?
Yeah. It'd always be on at her house when I'd go over there on Saturdays.
Who did Grandma like?
I don't remember, but I think it was like a lot of the older guys, like, because that was even like before Hogan was on there.
Damn, that's a long time ago. That's before my time, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm old. You know this.
You're not that old. Before Hogan what? Showed her up in WWF back then, what, early 80s, 84, 83, 84?
Yeah, it might have been like right when Hogan started showing up there.
I
didn't like watch it all the time.
No. I don't know a lot about the early days of Hogan. Really, my kind of break-in for his character, his shtick, was the first WrestleMania, and that was just going back on tapes and watching it. That came out when I was like 3 months old, so I don't remember that.
I was never really a Hogan fan anyway, so I didn't pay attention to him.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan either. Obviously, he was the centerpiece of what it was back then, but he was not my favorite either.
Macho Man and $1 Million Man were better.
Ooh, yeah! That's bad. Worth a shot, though. Anything else you want to add? Like, who were your favorites when you were a kid, or any other backstory as far as like why you watched?
Like I liked Diesel and Bret Hart when I was young. I went to see a house show, and Diesel fought Jeff Jarrett in the main event, and then the undercard was Bret versus Owen.
It's not bad undercard at all, especially when that was a WrestleMania match. Trying to remember what Mania that was. Was it 11?
It was around that, yeah. Then Bret lost in the opening match, but then went on to win the title.
Yeah. I can't remember. My brain's foggy. Generally, I'm good at that kind of stuff. Also, a little bit of story about Trevor. You can find him as well as, like I said, he's on the roster of NAW and EW every Tuesday, every Thursday. Going through a bit of a transformation right now with his character. So if you want to find out what he's all about, check out reruns. They're available at youtube.com/ new channel, Nerd Acumen Wrestling, but Dose of Nerd Acumen as well. Available on both. Find it there. All right, let's go over to Cody, though. Tell us what brought you into the wrestling world and why.
So mine's a little untraditional because my family really didn't watch wrestling too much. But my dad did take me to a wrestling show at a bingo hall when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And in the main event, we were surprised with Goldberg. And I can't remember who he was wrestling against, but it was a guy dressed up like a big bumblebee. And it really intrigued me. So when I got home, I tried to find wrestling almost every day on TV to try to figure out who these people were and try to figure out everything there was to know about wrestling. And I just got hooked from there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, too. The Bumblebee character.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a traditional like big promotion show. Like I said, it was just at some bingo hall. I really don't remember too much about it. There was probably 150 people in steel chairs around the ring. It was all floor seats. But yeah.
And Trevor in chat, you can talk, you know. You're here with us. He's chatting.
I didn't want to talk over him.
No, but when there's a pause, you can ask the question.
But yeah, Locke, it was a guy dressed up as like an actual bumblebee.
Wasn't there a tag team like Killer Bees or?
Yeah, those were like early 80 guys.
I was gonna say
80s.
And I mean, depending on when you went to this show, I don't think would Goldberg have done like a Legends of Wrestling show? I don't know.
It was probably, honestly, around 98 or 99.
98 or 99. Okay, so I mean, this would have been like prime Goldberg during his undefeated streak, well, close to the end of it, if it was then.
Yes, it would have been.
So I don't see him doing, like, that's weird that he would do like a house show. I guess, he would. He'd appear on Thunder and then their Saturday night stuff, but like for something in a bingo hall for 150 people, that's interesting. I have no clue.
It really wasn't a bunch of people. And I actually have a picture of him holding me at the bingo hall. So I don't know what kind of event it was. I don't remember that many matches. Probably, I really only remember like 3 or 4 matches from it. But like I said, I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, especially if you can't find it in archives anywhere, hard to specifically remember stuff from that. Do you still have the picture?
Yeah, I do still have the picture. It's at my mom's house. I'd have to dig for it, and I could post it on the page.
I was going to say, if you find it, feel free to post it in our group page. You can find us facebook.com/groups, either Dose of Nerd Acumen or Nerd Acumen Wrestling, wherever he ends up posting that, and check that out. I'd be interested to see it, so that'd be really cool. That's one thing that I wish I had from going to shows when I was younger, because my very first show was a house show. I don't believe I took any pictures. Back then it was those disposable cameras, and if I did take pictures, I can't recall them being, fantastic quality. It was in an arena, specifically the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, if you guys are familiar with the area. I don't believe it was a sold-out show. Again, it was a house show. It was probably like an hour and a half long. All they had was a black curtain and like, if you're watching right now, like a steel-structured frame, and that was it. Minimal lights. The sound production was like it was played through a CD player, but through the big speakers. I do remember the big main event was X-Pac and Kane as a tag team. So we're talking like well into the DX era, and then they had Tori at the time. So we're easily like 98, 99 was my first show as well, and I was 12 or 13 years old at the time. But that was not what got me into wrestling. At that point, I was already a big fan. The thing that I recall the most was when it... we got a follow here. Thanks for the follow. Scaring the crap out of all the listeners. Anonymous user watching us live on Twitch. I want to say it was like mid 90s, maybe before that. It was right around the time Raw was hitting television. Alerts are coming through twice. You know, it does that for whenever we do Discord. I don't know why. I don't know. It was right around the time Raw was hitting the airwaves, and then right before Nitro. I specifically remember people jumping ship. That was when I really dove in deep. But my first memories was with Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, when their rivalries. And I was only like shown tapes as a kid. It was probably at a daycare. Somebody put in a tape and was like, "This is wrestling." I'm like, "Cool. I want to play with G.I. Joes or something." And then it was when it started hitting the TV and I was getting 8 or 9 years old. I was like, "Yeah, this is really cool." And then from there out, I got hooked and became a loyal supporter of WWF at the time, now WWE. And when they started battling, I chose sides and I picked WWF. And I mean, I picked the winner, so. Any other fun early memories since we're kind of on that era of wrestling before we kind of jump around here?
Not necessarily. I kind of fell off with wrestling, kind of like most people do around 13, 14 years old. So I was kind of out of the loop for roughly 8 years until I had my own son. And we were just flipping through the channels on the couch one day, and he saw wrestling pop up, and he told me to go back. And we started watching it, and then he loved it, and he wanted to watch it again. He pretty much asked me every day. Then when wrestling came back on, we would watch that, and it became kind of a bonding experience. We both got hooked into the storylines, and we haven't stopped watching since. And now, like I said, that's been quite a few years now, but we went back into history and caught all up with everything that I did miss prior. But yeah, it's definitely a great bonding tool for us.
See, that's really cool that they're interested enough to go into the archives. My son, who is 4, is now getting into it. We watched a pay-per-view. It was SummerSlam of 2019. It was one of the first ones he got to stay up a little bit into the show to watch before he went to bed. It was when they were starting to do these pay-per-views starting at 7 p.m., which was nice. I personally, as I get older, I prefer they end earlier because work the next day, at least for us here at Eastern Standard Time. Those pay-per-views like WrestleMania, some were getting past midnight, and that's not cool. Especially when you have people over and you're kind of like, all right, show's done, get out. But you don't want to say that. But the match that caught his attention specifically and ignited his interest was Dolph Ziggler versus Goldberg. So it's funny that you brought up Goldberg because that is who piqued his interest. It was a squash match, go figure. And after the match, Goldberg was not done because Dolph Ziggler's mouth was not done. If you recall the match, he kept running his mouth, got in the mic, and basically begged for more. And Goldberg did his signature and finisher again, and then went up the ramp, and then came back down again. So it was a classic kind of scenario, if you will. And my son just absolutely loved it. And ever since then, he's wanted to watch Goldberg whenever he gets booked. And we all know he had a short title run that a lot of us fans were potentially disappointed by, depending on what level of hardcore fan you are and who you're a fan of. But then when he had lost the belt, spoiler alert, my son was very, very upset. I actually have on video because I knew it was going to happen. I'd have to dig and I'll post it into the group if you're interested too. But I have it on video, his upset reaction crying over Goldberg losing the championship. So that's cool. I've tried to get him to go into the archives and say, hey, look, this was like a guy when I was a kid, and show him his early matches, and he just doesn't really care. He just wants to watch SmackDown on Fridays, partially because I think he likes to stay up late, and it's an excuse, too, and I think he's genuinely starting to like the content now. He's a big fan of Bayley and Sasha. Trevor, what about you?
That house show I went to, actually, funny, my mom took me, not my dad. My dad went shopping with my sister that day. So it's kind of a reversal. Usually you go with your dad to stuff like sporting events and stuff, but went with my mom. So it was fun. Because my dad hates wrestling.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm always intrigued too why this is something I like to have a conversation with non-wrestling fans, because it's usually not that they just don't like it. They usually have something strong against it, and the first thing they say, it's fake, right?
Yeah.
And usually I give them the
we couldn't tell.
sarcastic. I was gonna say I give them the sarcastic response, like, "Really? No." Like they blew my mind.
That's always the go-to.
It's like, yeah, they're not really trying to kill each other, but you still got to have a lot of skill to do that without really actually killing the other person.
Yeah, I mean it's a choreographed dance. It's incredible. And honestly, like, the appeal for me still stands to say the production value, the writing, the stages, the music, the show of it all, the theatrics. That's what a lot of times intrigues me more than sometimes the wrestling matches themselves, because those are just kind of going through the motions sometimes, depending on the talent. One of the things I want to segue into is you guys spoke on going to events. What events have you been to? If there's like a list of 400, just kind of give me some cliff notes on your favorites then. But if it's only a few, let me know what kind of stuff you have seen besides what you've shared so far. Whoever wants to go first.
I can go first because mine's short. It's the one house show. That's all I've ever been to.
That's the only.
Yeah, I never really had a lot of extra money to go to that kind of stuff. We were gonna see about getting tickets for when it was in Detroit for the WrestleMania that just passed, but then that didn't happen.
Yeah,
or was it SmackDown? No,
it was SmackDown because it was the very first SmackDown that they started doing inside the Performance Center when everything hit the fan. The week prior was with an audience.
I had talked to Locke, and I'm like, we should get tickets for that. And then we never did, and everything went to hell. And I'm like, glad we didn't do that, because I would have to try to get a refund.
Which I think they honored pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think most places did do refunds, even though they usually wouldn't. But still, I was glad I didn't have to try and get a refund for it.
You should definitely experience a televised show. The only thing that I dislike about televised shows is you always wonder what happens during the commercial. Well, their music goes down to usually nothing, especially for the ones that enter before the commercial break. They put commercials on in the arena for either the network or various things happen or recaps for those 2 minutes that they're actually commercials, and then they fade the music back on. So that gets annoying because they tend to show you the same commercials over and over, especially if you go to a Raw, which is 3 hours long, and then they give you sometimes dark matches before and after. So you're in for a long night of breaks with that kind of stuff. But it's still worth seeing live. It's real cool energy. Cody, what about you?
So I really didn't go to many shows as a kid. I've been going to a lot more shows recently, well, before COVID. So I did go to the Raw before Mania last year, where it was Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. They all went in the back, and Ronda Rousey kicked through the glass of the police car. That whole
which is a
scenario.
Very memorable one. That would have been cool to see.
Yeah, that was in Baltimore. That was actually my wife's first show ever.
Now, where are you based out of, to give some insight to where you're seeing shows?
That one was in Baltimore. Now, we've been to quite a few house shows. I brought my son to a house show, which he really didn't find it as interesting live as he does on TV. But I also think that's because he really couldn't see too much. He does wear glasses, and I don't think he was really able to see too much, but he liked the music and the feel of everything that was there. The most memorable shows I've gone to is October 2nd of last year, AEW's first ever TV episode.
Talk about
that was
historic.
in Washington, D.C. It was just an incredible vibe there. The fans, WWE fans, it's either really hot or really cold. I've been to WWE shows in both of the arenas in Baltimore and in DC, and with a packed house, completely packed house. It was just completely electric, and I'll never forget how that crowd was. And then about a month later, after that show, they had AEW Full Gear in Baltimore. That's where John Moxley and Kenny Omega had their very violent match. I went to that one alone without any kids or wife. But again, it was a completely packed house, and it was just a completely different feeling in the stadium with it being completely packed out. Because most WWE events, you get 3/4, maybe halfway. They have tarps on a lot of the seats, but in these shows, I guess because of how new it was and how much hype it had to it, it was just a completely different feeling.
Yeah, Trevor, I can't emphasize enough with Cody's here explanation of the energy of live shows. House shows have a cool feel because you feel you're getting a unique experience that you can't see on TV, and you're getting a special show extra just for you. But the energy of live shows, I mean, nothing compares. As mentioned, my very first show was a house show. From there, I got the opportunity to go see Nitro and Thunder back in the days of WCW. One of the moments that I remember the most, and I was a huge fan of him at the time, was Jeff Jarrett. I was a big collector of all the t-shirts that I would go to when I would go to the events, and I would collect the t-shirts of my favorite stars. So I'd have a Stone Cold shirt with him like cheering beer, and on the back it said, "Oh hell yeah." Well, Jeff Jarrett's shirt said, "Listen up, slap nuts." I got in trouble at school for wearing that. This had to have been like 8th grade. I had to turn it inside out, which really annoyed me. But a lot of the shirts at the Attitude Era, you probably shouldn't have worn to school. Most notably, and you guys all know this, there is a specific chant that you probably shouldn't say that's still popular for wrestling fans to this day. Do you guys know what I'm speaking on?
There's a few.
What?
Not what?
I know which one.
I
know the one you're talking about, though.
What is it?
Suck it.
There it is. The DX Suck It. I got in trouble for saying that too to someone, so I won't dive too deep into the story, but I did get in trouble for that one. Pretty big trouble. Because apparently that means something pretty awful, I guess.
That as a kid we did not know.
No. We probably shouldn't have been exposed to some of this content at the age we were. But hey, what a time to be alive and watch wrestling. I can't complain about that. Besides WCW, I got to see Monday Night Raw eventually. I went to a few of those early on. I got to see SmackDown early on. And then over the years, I think I took a 1 or 2 year break from seeing live shows. Life happened. I didn't have any money. And then I met Andrew Alana, who's in chat right now. It was 2005 when we met, and I had started getting her into the tapes. I was a big, avid, and still am to this day, a big tape collector, DVD, Blu-ray collector of anything wrestling. If I can get my hands on it, I will collect it and own it. So if anyone listening wants to donate any unique tapes that you may have, contact me. I will pay to have it shipped if you're willing to part with it. Or if you want to sell to me, let me know what you have. And depending on the value of it, and if I don't have it, I'm interested. Let's talk. But with that, I started having her hang out with me, and this was a true testament to her commitment to being interested in me. It was a deal breaker. I got her watching wrestling, the DVDs, and then once we got cable, I got her into watching that with me. Into 2005, it was fall. Tragically, Eddie Guerrero passed that fall. But also around that time, I had started seeing ads on TV for WrestleMania. Keep in mind, at this time, we were based out of Grand Rapids, and a few hour drive was Chicago. Well, WrestleMania 22 was coming to Chicago. And as a huge wrestling fan, I'm like, I'd love to see WrestleMania, but that's just not an obtainable dream. I thought that was just fake, right? You couldn't get into that show, especially at the Allstate Arena. It housed less than 15,000 people. It's one of the smallest WrestleManias to date, and I believe the last Arena Mania show. So we did not get the tickets when they went on sale. We found a reseller. We ended up paying a little bit more than what the face value of the ticket was, but I had the money, and we scooped them up. So one of our first big dates out of the city to travel was in 2006, and that was to go see WrestleMania 22. And just the energy, like you had spoken about, Cody, the energy alone of something like a big show, it's incredible. And when they were doing America the Beautiful at the beginning of it, like I was trying to hold back, getting emotional, because I was just so overwhelmed that never in my life as a lifelong wrestling fan almost would I go to WrestleMania. Years would go on. I'd also have the opportunity in 2009 to go see the Royal Rumble. Since then, I've seen multiple more Raw and SmackDowns. And then most recently, myself, Henry, and Andrea Lana went to see Survivor Series, NXT TakeOver War Games, and then the SmackDown and Raw. 4-day weekend pass. We got like an amazing deal on it. I think it was only $250 or something. It was insane. Great seats, and it was just fantastic time. So the main four, the only one that I need to go see when the world goes back to normal, hopefully soon, please, for the love of God, is SummerSlam. That's on my bucket list. So, long story there, but when you've been a wrestling fan for a long time, I'm sure you have a lot of stories to share. Which brings us into our main topic, is the world of wrestling right now. Cody, I'm looking at you. If I didn't bore you guys to sleep.
No.
Okay. So, Cody and I recently had an exchange. I don't want to make it sound like we had a fight, because we didn't have a fight.
We had a fight.
We had a fight. Okay, we had a fight, he says. We'll put it as that. We had an exchange of words regarding the world of wrestling today. So this is the State of the Union for wrestling, if you will, that we wanted to bring up as our main topic of the show. Let's talk about the world of wrestling. What's happening? What do you like? What do you hate? And then we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us. So, Cody, you brought up AEW. You're a big fan. Let's talk.
I am a big fan of AEW. I think AEW and Impact Wrestling, surprisingly enough, are probably the two best wrestling programs on TV at the moment. SmackDown's definitely picked it up quite a bit in the past 3-4 weeks. I think Raw's been kind of stale, but they're also starting to pick it up a little bit. NXT used to be probably the best wrestling product on TV, but I think they're just going through kind of a building phase of a lot of new talent, so it's kind of hard to get as invested in NXT right now. But I do think that AEW and Impact Wrestling are the two most enjoyable wrestling programs right now, unless you wanted to bring up New Japan Wrestling, but that has a very, I don't want to say small following, but just the fact that it is hard to get English dub on it. It is kind of hard to watch, not understanding the commentators and everything like that.
For a while there, New Japan was available with commentary from, who's the UFC fighter, and Jim Ross. They were doing the dubbing of the programming.
They were. Yep.
I'm trying to remember the other guy's name for the life of me.
Isn't it Conrad?
maybe I don't know. If you said his full name, I'd be like, yes. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. It's been a while. That used to be on a channel that I did get on cable, no longer get. So I've fallen behind on New Japan. And when they did a talent loss, when a lot of people started coming over here, I stopped following as heavily. I do have to say, with this year, we are thankful that we are still getting wrestling content with the world the way it is right now. I honestly was very nervous for the future of wrestling for a minute there, especially when you talk about a rebuilding for NXT. It's not only a rebuilding for NXT, but it's a rebuilding of wrestling in general, because so many people lost their jobs this year in the wrestling world. And that is just tragic. Notably, people that were on the up and up or should have been in good spots. They're no longer in WWE, or they're jumping around from promotion to promotion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's kind of happened everywhere in the world. Even like we were talking about New Japan, Gorillas of Destiny is probably the most popular tag team in that promotion at the moment. And they were locked in the United States because of the travel ban, and couldn't get over there and do any shows, and kind of had to watch from the sidelines. Same thing if you look at AEW, like Pentagon and Ray Phoenix. They were stuck in Mexico. A couple wrestlers were stuck in Canada. So you were kind of working with a short staff as is.
Isn't Pac like still over in the UK?
Yes, he's stuck in the UK as of right now. So it's kind of, it is difficult, especially when you do have a smaller roster like NXT and AEW, to kind of capitalize and keep creating such good content with people that that wouldn't necessarily be as shown on TV. But they've honestly, everybody's adapted pretty well. And we are coming, it seems like we're coming back and starting to get some fans in the crowd for most of these promotions. And it does seem like NXT is going to be doing that here shortly as well.
So my understanding of these fans, the way WWE has been handling, correct me if I'm wrong, has been untelevised or some televised NXT talent who they've been letting in. Now, that's not the same for AEW. Those are legit actual fans, from my understanding, from the area.
Yeah,
just recently.
They were doing the same thing. AEW was using a lot of unused talent in the crowd, and they still are doing that in the front rows. But now AEW, because it is an open-air arena and everything like that, they're still practicing social distancing, so they're not packing out the house, but they are having quite a few fans in attendance now.
I think it's like 100 or so, maybe. And they're all spread out.
Yeah, which is pretty much what you see the NFL doing right now as well. I think I'm a Ravens fan, so the Ravens for sure had 250 people total in the entire stadium. I think the Chiefs are holding 7,000 people in the stadium.
Jeez. And these are all local guidelines based on the regions.
That's a stadium that holds a lot more than that. I believe that's about 20% of their stadium.
That's so many people using the same vending, same restroom. Like that makes me nervous.
It's asking for some trouble. And I believe the first week that the Chiefs did it was week 1, and I want to say week 3 it came out that a few people did get COVID that went to the game.
I mean, I don't know what to say. We're not here to give commentary on that kind of thing, but I mean,
yeah,
that's a whole different podcast. I'm sure Andrew Lano would love to host that one. So we speak on this rotation of talent. That's kind of what I want to segue into now, since we're on that. One of the things that we talked about specifically, that we kind of our first back and forth that gave us the idea to kind of relaunch this podcast in general, Was our, maybe I guess disagreement is light compared to our back and forth, but we had a disagreement on how other organizations are handling acquisitions from WWE. So as you know, WWE, as I mentioned, laid off a good chunk of their staff on screen and off. Those people were without contracts, they have to work. I don't blame them for going other places. That's fine. It's how other companies have handled in the past and are still handling to this day, which is what I brought up when we had our back and forth on that. So to kind of kick things off, the thing that I had the problem with, and please, again, give me feedback like you had done before, but the thing I had the problem with is that every time, I shouldn't say every, a vast majority in the 90% or higher, talent when they go to another organization is bitter. And my stance was don't be bitter, be better. And that is my stance for AEW as a whole. Focus on developing your talent, not having your first promos and things you do on screen for your character be a jab at the company you came from. That bothers me because so many, if not most, do this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I see it completely different, obviously. I do think that the guys coming over, they are making digs. Rusev or Miro, however you want to call it, talked about grabbing the impossible brass ring and shoving it up, where.
He got a push, though. That's the thing, and this is what we talked about. He got his push. Why are you so bitter? Your storyline sucked at the end. They screwed you over, but then again, the fans didn't care anymore. You were floundering on the roster, a large roster.
I disagree with that.
I don't think he got much of a push. He had the crowd.
Rusev Day was amazing. He should have got the push there.
But
then instead of going forward, they went backwards and had his wife hook up with Bobby Lashley. That was a burial. It wasn't
that killed it. That killed his career in WWE.
Absolutely.
Nobody benefited from that angle.
No. Lana didn't.
That was
Bobby
horrible.
Lashley didn't. It was just a completely dumb idea. It was a stupid idea from bad creatives.
Yeah, not a single person came out great. Lashley, I mean, what he's doing now is his best work in WWE.
Absolutely.
But for a moment there, I'm like, oh, they need to cut this dude. He's, again, nothing. Like his first run in WWE, he was nothing. He's a muscle. He's a meathead. Get rid of him. But now he's doing something. Now it's interesting. Finally. But man, the struggles he had to go through to get here. Hope he realizes what he can do now.
Yeah, but back to what we were talking about before with them making jabs. I don't think jabs are a bad thing. I think having the fans want a rivalry.
Yes.
At least most fans. If you're on social media, you see the disagreement. You see the hard AEW fans. You see the hard WWE fans. And they're always going back and forth.
My problem is with the marks that want so desperately, because they may have not lived through it, the Monday Night Wars. They wanted it in 2010 when Bischoff showed up with Hogan and Impact to recreate it then. That lasted 3 months. Fans want it now with AEW. Anytime an organization gets some momentum, they want to relive the Monday Night Wars and recreate that magic again. It's not going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And even the talent will tell you that. The Best Friends just did a podcast. It was an AEW Unrestricted podcast. And they were actually talking about the Wednesday Night Wars. And they said it's not a war. That's stupid. All of their friends are in NXT. They're friends with everybody there. They want them to succeed, not at their expense, but they want to see NXT succeed as well. But the back and forth, that's good for wrestling in a broad aspect. That makes everybody talk about wrestling.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that sentiment. I think competition is good for business. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But the bitterness and the jabs are a bit excessive, and that's the problem, as mentioned. It's constant, and Jericho is the king of controversy, one of my favorites of all time. But He's the king of controversy. Showing ratings every single week as they're competing with NXT, having jabs every opportunity he can get in every segment, it just became excessive. And when I saw it being constant with all the talent, and AEW has been around on television for a year, every person that I was seeing go over there from WWE was doing this kind of stuff, was bitter about everything. Moxley, the same thing. Cody Rhodes, his bitterness, justified, keep in mind.
Yep.
But it becomes petty on both parties. And that's the problem I have. We're not focusing on... Go ahead.
Brody Lee, he taking digs at Vince with his character.
Yeah, that's literally his gimmick is Vince McMahon.
I think it's funny. That really turned that whole thing around. I didn't like the Dark Order. I just thought it was kind of dumb. And,
the Dork Order.
And then when Brody Lee came and changed it, and he's Vince McMahon, basically, you do it my way or else.
Here's the thing about him. The only reason he was relevant in WWE was because of the Wyatt family. Would he have been a star for any other reason?
I liked him by himself.
But would he have been a star?
If they pushed him right, maybe.
I do think that if they pushed him when he first got exiled with Randy Orton, and they had the Battle Royale, both of them went over, landed at the same time. I think that was the time to push Brody Lee, because if they pushed him there, he was extremely over. There's no doubt about how over he was at that time. But instead of pushing him, they pushed him to the back and then returned him with Eric Rowan as a tag team again. And it was really his downfall.
He does not fit the appeal of what Vince wants. He would have never been a main event player.
Okay. I don't think he could have been the top of the card, but he could have been an upper mid-card guy at the very least, because he's a big dude, and Vince loves big, sweaty men.
He does, but not all of them get the belt.
But
he could have got the IC title and had a good run with it. I'm not saying this said he wouldn't be the top, but the IC title used to mean something. The US title used to mean something. Now it's just we got this belt here.
The thing is, I think a lot of these talents, they go into the industry, they're groomed a certain way with their egos and their character of being the best they can be. They live, breathe, and they are this character. I think a lot of them need reality checks and realize not all of them are going to be the biggest and best thing ever. That is a very small pool of people. Not everyone can achieve that status. There are some that are given that status and probably still not achieving that status. We'll get to Roman Reigns in a moment, Cody. So I think a lot of people need to learn their place, because not everyone is going to be the guy or the girl or the champion or the main eventer or the this, that, and so on.
Tribal chief?
The tribal chief, yeah. So I think a lot of these people, if they can swallow that pride that they were groomed through their entire career because their job is their ego and their character they live and breathe, which again, I'm just saying these things because I'm here to talk about it. I'm not a wrestler. I don't understand fully. But this is my perspective. They need to kind of surrender and swallow that pride and realize their place and focus on the product and the show. And maybe that would appeal towards different types of people as well. There are marks that are in it for the rivalry between brands. They just want a war. But there's people that just want to see all these things succeed and put on a good show. Like myself. I want AEW to be a good alternative show that I can go check out. Not jab at this, jab at that. And I'm like, okay. I'm tuned out and turned off. Go on.
Yeah, if they're all doing good, then it helps us push each other is what I want them all to be good. And SmackDown has improved a lot. I didn't even care to watch SmackDown for half the time, and like, it's crap.
Oh, it is the better show to watch. Raw is too damn long. 3 hours is too long.
Yeah. And I'm hoping they can do with Retribution. Once now they got a leader, they can turn that around, because that is not a good angle so far. And I'm hoping like having a leader will be like the Dark Order. They have a leader, and it turns the thing around. Is it great? No. Is it a lot better than it was? Yes. Let's hope they can do the same thing, because that's not a good angle right now.
Right, and that's what wrestling has as far as opportunity, being a weekly program. They can, react and understand based on feedback and hopefully fix things. The other problem is writing long term for some of these things. The vision, you have to adjust based on feedback. And I think it's like a rubber band. They're trying to figure that out, where it's going to snap or how to bounce back.
And I gotta say, AEW did good with that one angle where what's Cody's wife's name? Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
They had that whole angle where she was like a dark coven or whatever, and nobody liked it. It was complete crap, and they just finally just were like, we're done with that. It's done. We're just not going to continue. Nobody likes it.
And I mean, we've seen that in the history of wrestling in general. Abandoned angles, we see that all the time. You know, something that just flops, doesn't work. They take them off TV for a little while, and they bring them back to something different. Repackaging, you know.
Yeah. I was glad they just got rid of that, because that was not a good one.
Yeah, the Nightmare Collective.
Yeah, that was it. That was so bad, I just forgot the name of it.
Yeah, and it only lasted about 3-4 weeks before they realized how bad it was. And then they kind of tossed it to AEW Dark. It wasn't working there, even on YouTube, so they just kind of left it.
Now, I've yet to watch that. AEW Dark is, like you said, on YouTube. It's a collection of matches. I see that they're always like 8 matches, 9 matches, 10, 11. These are just dark matches, just things they're recording on the side and then making into a show? Is that how that works? I've never watched it, so.
Yeah, so AEW Dark is basically the undercard. So that's where they test things out, as in new gimmicks, new characters, new talent in general, just to give them a field not on TV, to be able to perform and see how over they get on basically the comment section and Twitter, through AEW Dark. And if it feels like it's working, then they move it to TV. If it's not working, kind of like the Nightmare Collective, they just drop it completely and focus on something different.
Now, what are some of the hottest programs right now in your mind for wrestling in general? Like AEW, Impact, WWE, anything? Like, what are the things that they're doing well?
Impact has probably the best storylines right now. They've been doing very well with their storylines and keeping everything interesting, and even using talents from WWE that got let go and utilizing them well into good storylines. AEW's kind of a mix. They're doing a lot of slow burns right now with like Kenny Omega. They know that everybody wants to see him in single spotlight as the cleaner, who he was most popular as in New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a very slow burn, but I think that their matches, and they're especially focused on their tag team matches, are arguably
their tag division is the best. Of the ones I watch, I don't watch Impact, so I can't say how good their tag team division is.
Yeah, and it's arguably some of the best matches out of any wrestling company. Arguably, my favorite match of all time has become the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman Page. I'm trying to think of what pay-per-view it was at. I want to say Retribution.
So WWE is created a faction off a AEW pay-per-view name?
Yes.
That's funny.
Retribution was an AEW pay-per-view name. But I believe that's where the Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman Page was. And that's probably become my favorite match of all time. Not just tag team match. Just how good of a wrestling program it was. The story was amazing for weeks. The match alone, it was long, but it didn't feel like it was too long. The action kept going. The crowd was amazing, which elevated the match even higher. Um, but yeah, AEW, I think their tag team wrestling is really what elevates them to me, because I really like tag team wrestling, to be one of the best programs on right now.
Yeah, I really enjoy tag team wrestling as well, and it's something that's been hit or miss forever. Well, maybe not forever. The 80s and early 90s was really solid for tag team wrestling in WWF. Ever since then, it's just like they have random people together. A lot of it does not make sense, and they just can't keep teams together. Every time somebody gets momentum, they break them up for whatever reason. So to speak on AEW having good tag teams, that's a solid thing, but they do have the tag team that I loathe the most, and that is the Young Bucks. I had followed them for a long time in New Japan, Ring of Honor, with the Bullet Club gimmick that was happening, which was very popular if you're a worldwide wrestling fan. If you're unfamiliar with the Bullet Club, you should really look that stuff up. There's some interesting stuff there. The problem I had was after seeing them in Ring of Honor, I watched them, and I watched the Ring of Honor. I went to a show live in Dearborn, Michigan, which was really cool. But it was after that when I started realizing something, that they were kind of, I don't want to say one-trick ponies because they have a lot of tricks, but the shtick was the same. And I see that with so many wrestlers. I'm not just pointing the finger saying Young Bucks are doing the same thing nobody else is, because a lot of them are. That is wrestling, right? You have your 5 moves of doom kind of thing, John Cena. Can they do other moves? Sure they can. But I kept seeing a lot of the same spots, and it was just kind of losing its luster because the spots were big. They do big moves, like high-risk moves, all the time. And it started losing its value when I was seeing it week after week after week. And I want to see these things less to have a bigger impact. It was kind of like, God, drawing a blank now, Ricochet. When he first debuted, it's like we're seeing his finish in every friggin' match. And I was like, okay, I've seen this now. I've seen this. You're landing this. You're landing this. It's like, okay. And come to find out, he was getting hurt from doing it 5-6 nights a week. It was wearing on him. So they changed him up a little bit. But ultimately, that's the problem that I have with the Young Bucks specifically. They took too many things, like the Too Sweet thing. They took Super Kick. Like, they're just fans of wrestling that have taken their thing and packaged it into, like if we were to have a creator wrestler in a game, take everybody's finisher move into their moveset, right? It's kind of annoying to see. And we know those individuals on our shows that do that, because we can call out their spots. We're going to see this from them again, blah, 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 blah. That's the feeling I have of the Young Bucks. So hopefully you have a better understanding of my dislike, because I've spoken ill of them before, and nobody really knew why.
Yeah, I understand that to a certain extent. But again, I think that's a lot of indie wrestling, and I do think that's why AEW is so big, because they've become kind of, I don't want to say the top of the indies.
Oh, totally are, though.
But they've become this mecca for indie wrestling. And it's a good thing. You're not seeing boring squash matches every week. You're not seeing really a lot of rest holds and kind of Randy Orton style wrestling, where it's a lot of kind of suplexes, rest hold, suplex, rest hold, RKO. You don't really see that as much. It's a lot more technical wrestling. It does seem a little bit more choreographed at times, but it just has a different feel to it. It has that indie feel to it, and the high spots that they do, the big spots, I think that it's good and bad. It's bad because they have to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually you can't get much bigger before somebody gets seriously hurt, like Matt Hardy.
Exactly, and that's what I said, a side effect of this, and it's why it's so problematic.
But again, it's kind of what the fans enjoy. The fans of indie wrestling have become AEW fans.
It's the modern day ECW fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And not kind of, they do that hardcore wrestling kind of like ECW did, but they also...
I'm not comparing the wrestling style, I'm saying the camaraderie of the fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. They inherited that entire fan base. They've inherited the entire New Japan fan base because a lot of the wrestlers there are from New Japan. All the hardcore Ring of Honor fans are now AEW fans. So they've kind of inherited all these fans. Now they're pretty much breaching 1 million viewers a week. And like I said, it's good and bad that they're doing all these high spots. But that's kind of what the fans want to see. It's what they've grown accustomed to. And if they stop doing that, then they just become stale, kind of like what WWE's kind of become.
Yeah, I mean, the WWE has its own unique style as you compared the two. You can tell talent that's been groomed and trained at WWE. You can tell a talent that comes from elsewhere into WWE, then slowly transitions into the WWE style. We saw that, a great example, AJ Styles. You look at his career resume and his body of work in that first 3 months in WWE compared to now. Age plays a factor. His size and age play a factor. But his style is not the same as it was in his Impact or TNA run. And you see that, or even New Japan. And you see that from a lot of people. Shinsuke, another example. But it's the limitations of the style that WWE wants to present as far as their product. So you are going to get that in, like you said, top tier indie that is AEW.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the younger fans, for example, would rather see Canadian destroyers 5 times in a show than they would like to see rest holds and just very slow-paced wrestling. Like Roman is very slow-paced. Baron Corbin is very slow-paced. Randy Orton, for example. Everybody, I mean, it's a completely different style. Which, not saying that their style's bad. It's just not as entertaining to most fans because it's not as high impact and high velocity and high speed as indie wrestling.
We could say Corbin's bad.
You also gotta.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Corbin's bad though.
He's generic.
I do think he's very slow paced.
He's generic,
and he has his 5 moves of doom.
He has 2 of the best finishers, and it's just like, I don't know, just nothing about him. I just don't like anything about him. Not
I
like
also think
as a
they
heel
don't push
either.
him well. I think him winning King of the Ring, he should have gotten a push right away.
he had
but
money
he
in
never-
the bank.
Yes, but
He
then he
had-
got into an argument about a doctor not caring about CTE and got punished for it, which I don't think he should have been punished for a doctor.
Half of working in WWE is playing politics with people. That's why certain people succeed and certain people fail. That is the real world in the corporate world, and it sucks.
Oh, absolutely, but he's not. He wasn't wrong in that. I mean, and
It's not about right or
90%
wrong.
of people feel. I completely agree with that. But him having that football experience and seeing friends of his that had to retire early because of concussions and everything like that, and then you have a doctor in front of you, kind of saying that CTE is not real, and you pretty much calling that doctor dumb and then getting punished for it.
I mean, I would have called the doctor dumb too. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And
look
it's
at
the
what
people
happened
that-
to people with this. Like, we have historical data on changed personalities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people that speak out and actually have a mind of their own and aren't robots are the ones that kind of get pushed aside, like Baron Corbin. He may not be absolutely amazing. I mean, he has some great-looking moves. He's decent on a mic. There's no reason he should be. There's no reason he should have never been a WWE champion.
Not everyone can be. I spoke on that earlier, though, and that's the problem with it. If you give everyone the belt, it doesn't make it as illustrious. So not everyone can
absolutely.
achieve that status.
But I think he's a lot more qualified than some of the people that have gotten the belt.
I'm still mad that they booked him to retire Kurt Angle. He should not have been the guy.
He probably shouldn't have been the one.
No,
to
even Kurt
retire.
Angle on a recent Stone Cold podcast spoke on that.
Yeah.
Angle was upset. He didn't want that to be how it went down.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't fault Corbin for not surrendering pride or anything, and standing up for himself and his beliefs. Personally and professionally, I've been held back myself when speaking out when I probably should have kept my mouth shut. But that's just how I am. I'm not a kiss ass. I'm not about to be. So I respect that in him, and that's saying a lot because I don't like him as a talent. And personally, from what I've seen, if it's real, his backstage stuff in his early run in NXT, how he treated people, he was kind of an asshole. So I don't care for him personally if that's how he really is either.
Yeah, and I mean, no, I guess we would never know how he actually is in real life. But I mean, if you do watch Up, Up, Down, Down, for example, he's always on Up, Up, Down, Down, and it seems like people like him backstage. Maybe not the corporate people backstage, but the roster actually likes him as a human being.
Speaking of Up, Up, Down, Down, actually, I want to get this. This is a hot topic right now. Two things, real quick. I want your guys' opinion, both Trevor and Cody here. Everyone's saying on social media, breaking up the New Day. They're not broken up. They're just separated. Obviously, Big E staying on SmackDown. The Tag Team Champions going to Raw, which, spoiler alert if you did not watch SmackDown, Xavier Woods is back. Hooray! He's healed. And he's champs with Kofi. So the Freebird rule, I guess, not in effect this time for the New Day. As the Tag Champs going to Raw, Big E staying to SmackDown. That's right? Is that right? Did I get that right? Or is that backwards?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
So quick thoughts and feelings on that.
I think it's a good thing. I think they should be pushing Big E. Give him a solo push because he deserves it. I mean, Kofi got the one. Woods is still young, so he'll get one. I mean, Big E's not old, but he's older than Xavier, I think. So give him
they're
a good
well into
push.
their 30s.
And he deserves it. Deserves to be having a good push, and I don't think he could do that with the other two members always being around, because then they'll be like, oh, they're just a tag team. They're just a tag team.
Kofi got the nod with them around.
Yeah, I know, but Kofi's also been there so long that people finally were like, he deserves it, give it to him.
But he also wasn't going to get it. The only reason that he got the push is because Ali got hurt in that chamber. Wasn't able to compete. And then all of a sudden fans just wrote on the Kofi movement. And I'm thankful it happened, because that's one of the greatest moments in recent WrestleMania history.
I just think it'll be a good thing, and hopefully they can still bring them back together eventually, because they didn't turn on each other like everybody thought someone of them was going to turn. I mean, they could still, because they're going to have another match on Friday with all three of them.
Right, and that's what a lot of people speculated would be. There was going to be a turn for someone, and then Big E getting the push, which he does deserve. That match with Sheamus on SmackDown was brutal. Big E's talented, and he's got the personality to add to it. So I think there's a lot of potential. They just need to use him right.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought that Big E should have turned heel multiple times within the past 2 years. And I know that they, as in the New Day, have always said that they want to be a team that it never turns on each other, and when they retire, they're still good friends, even on TV. But I mean, I look at Big E's heel runs in NXT as Big E Langston, and when he came to the main roster and was working with Dolph Ziggler, I honestly think that Big E could be such a good heel, especially now that he's much more known, a lot more recognized. He has such a mean streak to him that I feel like could make him a top heel in a matter of words, because of how violent he can actually be, how mean he is, how well he can actually talk. And that's not even talking about just on the mic. That's talking about in the ring when you hear him talking smack to his opponents. He's just so good in that aspect. I think him turning heel and destroying the New Day would be so big for him, because it would make him such a hated figure. and I think he would thrive off of that.
So, I mean, would you guys want him to be a heel or a face? It seems you're leaning towards heel.
I would say heel 100%.
Trevor?
I think heel would work better for him because Kofi had the big face run.
moment,
Now,
yeah.
that would set him apart and not just be, oh, he's just copying Kofi, just happy-go-lucky, I'm the champ.
Yeah, he'd be an interesting heel. I like him as a face. I think he's a very welcoming personality type, a very, very likable. But I think there is, and I had the opportunity with Henry. Him and I got to do an autograph signing with him and have our picture taken with the New Day. And let me tell you, those tag belts, they're heavy. They're heavier than they look. But one of the things that I had as far as an interaction, I tried to have a little small talk with Xavier when I met him. I was wearing an Alter Beast shirt. And it's like, hey, up, up, down, down, because we're going to get to that in a minute. He thought it was cool. And then Big E was like, yeah, I don't play video games. It's shit's stupid. But it was in that moment, I'm like, you're very sarcastic. That could make for a cool heel. For his inviting personality, but be very sarcastic and just kind of be a dick.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of did that. New Day went quite a while of being heels, and they were all very good at being still happy-go-lucky, but sarcastic and mean to the crowd and mean to their opponents. They all three did very well at that.
Yeah, and I think that could be a fun thing. So, thinking about it, I'd like to see a heel run as well, too. I just want to see a run. Do something with this guy. He's a workhorse. Give him a break. And then also on the topic of up, up, down, down, recently, within the past month or so, WWE has issued a statement in regards to something that has become very popular for talent during these lockdown times. A lot of talent have been connecting with their audience through the forums of social media. Expanded upon that, something like this platform we're on now. Discord, Twitch, YouTube. And that has become part of the attention
Cameo.
of Cameo. This has become, which we had a cameo too. Shout out Herman. Thank you for making that possible with Mick Foley. A lot of people use this as a secondary form of income. Because as we all know, with contracts for talent, they are all paid very, very differently. Some not as great as others. So a lot of the people have been missing out and connecting with the fans. So they've used these various platforms as mentioned to connect with such fans. Well, WWE is basically putting a stop to that. Or there's the option of putting it under their umbrella and being, and this is something that I wish I had the quote by me, but AJ Styles spoke politely, but basically was said he was unsure of what exactly is happening because the way he found out was just the same as the way the fans had found out through social media. So he wasn't even aware of what was happening until he read it online. Basically, they're giving a deadline. They want them to just not do that anymore. And there are a lot of people, AJ Styles, Paige, I mean, the list goes on, up, up, down, down, very popular. Probably one of the most popular channels out there. I want to get your guys' thoughts. Like if you were in their position or just thoughts in general on how this is being handled.
I think it's bull crap because they're considered independent workers, which is also crap, but we won't get into that right now.
But I mean, their contract and their license, they as you know, with the stuff that Cody Rhodes has been going through, stuff that his father trademarked is still under the umbrella of WWE. Like they own you, they own your name, they own everything.
Yeah, but they're considered independent workers, so they don't have to give them like healthcare stuff. I think all that.
Well, they don't have to provide them that, no, but. There's even for my employer, there's an inventions clause. Anything that I create with their equipment or under their hours, they can claim. So if I created this NOW podcast with you guys, they could come after and claim that. But I hadn't during those working hours or with their equipment. But it's just an example. So they could come after them for those Twitches. For the stuff that they create, because it's a likeness.
As long as they're not using their wrestling names, let them use their real names. Then I don't see they should be able to come after them.
Right.
So if they're not sitting there talking about all their matches, they can talk about wrestling, but not like their specific matches. Maybe like. Plus, most of the time, I think they're playing video. I don't really watch them. I haven't watched AJ Styles or Up, Down, Down, really, so I can't say what they have on there. But I think they're mainly talking about video games or whatever they're playing at the time.
Sure.
They might like mention it, but
again, it's those likenesses. You've seen a bunch of podcasts pop up too. Like the New Day has a podcast, but it's a WWE owned podcast.
Yep.
So it's one of those things like we don't know the extent of their contract. I don't believe that's public information. But what is all written in there? What are they protected by? And if they're not, they can't do any of these freedoms. My personal stance, I think, is bullcrap as well. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I think that they should be able to do what they want on their free time. So if on their free time they want to do Cameo and do shout-outs for profit, I think that should be completely fine. For example, I do watch... I watch Adam Cole, I watch AJ Styles, I watch Austin Creed, all on Twitch. And yeah, like Trevor was saying, they're not really talking about wrestling. Yes, they are themselves in their streams. Most of them don't even use their wrestling names. Like Adam Cole goes by Chugs, Xavier Woods goes by Austin Creed. AJ Styles is a little different. He goes by AJ Styles.
I believe he owns his trademark name, though.
But yes, he owns AJ Styles as a name. But I do think it's kind of ridiculous that something that they enjoy to do on their off time, especially in an era like this, where they're not doing meet and greets, they're not doing everything like that, where they can connect with their fans and take pictures and do little things like that to make money. Now, I think would be even more of a time to allow them to do Twitch and Cameo and podcasts and stuff like that with Patreon to actually make additional money that they would have been making anyway. And I do think that it's just complete crap that they aren't allowed to do that.
And it's free advertising for WWE. Like, somebody that may never watch wrestling could see them playing a video game that they like, and they're like, oh, I want to check this guy out on what he does.
Absolutely.
Other than this.
No, I completely agree with that. I think that's great for WWE in general, seeing their wrestlers getting thousands of people in the gaming world to watch them that might not watch wrestling, and seeing them and liking them enough to actually check out the product, and that gets you more viewers in the long run.
I mean, I agree with all those sentiments, but I think from a corporate perspective, they want money, and they want it under their umbrella. I think that's what it all boils down to, is greed.
Oh, it's complete greed.
Yeah, we can understand why they want it, but it's kind of it's still bull crap.
And they're the only company that's doing that as far as wrestling goes. Going back a little bit where you were talking about digs, I thought one of the best digs that AEW has done was right after that came out, was an AEW pay-per-view, and Kip Sabian held up a sign that had his Twitch handle and said at the bottom of the screen that AEW approves this message. And I just thought that was great, because that's just absolutely ridiculous to the roster as a whole that they're getting, I don't want to say punished, but it kind of is punished for trying to branch out and do something totally on their free time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, in regards to that dig, let me add an asterisk to everything I said about being petty, because there was also so-and-so is all elite, how they do that on social media when someone signs with them. I can't remember her name, but there was a talent that they acquired that said is also a Twitch streamer.
Yes.
It was around that time when all this was going out. So I forget who they acquired. I wish I could remember. It doesn't really matter fully, but So they had that in their post, and that's not something they add for everybody. But it was being petty with it, but it was a dig too. I think there's a place in timing, and when it's not excessive, I think it works. So to add that asterisk to my statement at the beginning of this broadcast, I do want to point that out because, again, I do agree to an extent that it is good for business. But excessive use, if anything, is bad for your program when that's what you focus on.
I would like to see WWE take a dig at AEW for something.
Which they
They
have.
have the Hall of Fame.
They don't do it very often, though.
No, because they don't want to give them the spotlight.
They didn't acknowledge WCW for the longest time.
Because it gives the other thing credibility, and they don't want to give them that. They need to feel they are superior, elite, if you will.
I don't know if you remember, but WWE was kind of the first one to throw a dig. And I don't know if you remember or not, but I will explain it. At the Hall of Fame ceremony, when DX got inducted.
They talked to Mr. Ass.
Yep, and Triple H literally said that Vince will buy that piss-ass company just to fire you again. That was the first dig that was ever made.
I'm fairly confident AEW had digs before then.
AEW wasn't on TV yet.
No, but they were doing pay-per-view, and there were digs on social media regarding it before then. Then there was also the timing with, I want to say it was Bret Hart. That might have been shortly after, too. They were bitter about that, and there were a couple other appearances they were pretty bitter about.
That was the same Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Okay.
Where Bret Hart got attacked, you might say.
Yeah, because he appeared and presented the AEW championship shortly after. It was him, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep, shortly after he came and presented.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember a timeline, because I know there was back and forth. So that's the biggest notable one, being on the stage it was on for Hall of Fame. But it was at that time. There were other things happening. I wish I could find a timeline or something. There'd be maybe another talking point, maybe a special from our podcast itself going through the back and forth and what was good and what was bad, what was used well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I agree with you that AEW is definitely more at fault for making digs, and it's mainly. I do like how it's not necessarily people that shouldn't say it. Like, you don't see Darby Allin or Jungle Boy or anybody like that making digs. The only people you see really making digs are people that came from the company.
Because they're
and
bitter.
Yes, they are bitter about it.
There are only a few that have a right to be.
Moxley definitely did.
But I
Why?
think they're the only ones that have a right to say something. They're the only ones that have a right to make said dig.
The only one that I found incredibly petty, but it was fun to watch, was the sledgehammer to the throne from Cody Rhodes.
I thought that was great.
Because immediately you're like, oh, Triple H, you're watching. I know you are.
You knew it. You knew that was a complete shot at Triple H.
So again, there are moments that can be used effectively. But the problem I have is when your first promo, when you show up, is a dig. Focus on you, presenting why you're here, not why you are here because you got fired, but why you're actually here. That's what you should.
Yeah, but I think if you're underutilized, kind of like Miro was, to a certain extent, I know you say that he was pushed, but I disagree with that statement. Like Brody Lee, John Moxley was very unhappy, and if you listen to his podcast with Jericho, there's a lot of things wrong backstage that make people unhappy, and we just don't know the whole story to it.
And that's fine. Just leave and focus on bettering your character and career. Don't focus on being bitter about where you came from, because it's too much energy focused in the wrong place. Enhance your character, elevate yourself to the next level.
Miro said he's only going to take that one shot, and then from now on, it's just about his character being
That's
the
fine,
character.
but it's one of those things.
Yeah,
your debut, it's.
He just wanted to get it off his chest. Basically.
That's pretty much how all of them have been for the most part.
And I get
making
it.
that one dig, and
I get
that's
it.
their way. That's their way of kind of burying
Brody
the
Lee.
hatchet. Besides Brody Lee, whose whole gimmick is Vince McMahon, which is absolutely hilarious.
And I get it. If you've ever been fired from a job and then maybe hired by their competitor, that's a feel-good moment to throw it back in their faces of what they could have had. You're able to do that. There's part of me that gets it. But it's when it becomes excessive, when you're seeing it all the time. And I saw it years ago with Impact when they were acquiring people. Drew McIntyre, was it Drew Galloway when he was over there? That was his name, right? Is that what they called him?
Yep.
The same thing. And there were so many. Anytime people left, they went somewhere else, and that was the shtick they did for the first little bit. We saw it from Sandow. We saw it from, like I said, the list goes on. And it became, to me, like, okay, get it off your chest. Let's focus on you. And then they all do the same thing. They get the belt, or they get a big push. They get that out of the system, and then they get shoved to the side. And then they come crawling back. Not all of them, but they come crawling back to WWE. Some of them do better because of that. They saw the potential, and you're like, hey, there is some stock value in you. And maybe you've learned your lesson. Drew McIntyre is a great example. The dude had to be humbled from my understanding of his storied career. The guy that was basically going to get the golden gloves or the golden shoes, or whatever you want to describe it as. He was going to give the key to the city, right? He got fired. We all know his story. They used it, I believe, for his WrestleMania package this year.
They did.
And so if you didn't watch, now you know. And then some people need to be humbled like that, and it is for the best sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that's the difference now with AEW. I do see it completely different than Impact. I really didn't see Impact ever as much of a threat, and I really don't see AEW as much of a threat as much as I do a company that has tons of potential,
tons of money.
Yeah, to stay relevant for a long time, because they are able to pay their roster pretty much what WWE pays, if not a little bit more, because Tony Khan
has got
and
deep
the
pockets.
Khan family has much deeper pockets than Vince McMahon. But not only that, you also look at WWE considers their roster private contractors, so they don't have medical, they don't have any of that stuff. But the AEW roster has medical, and they have free reign to everything that a Jacksonville Jaguars player has, as far as the medical staff, the hospital, everything like that, completely paid for. And that's something that's honestly really big. I mean, you look at yourself going to a job, you're not looking just at what your paycheck's going to be, you're also looking at the benefits that come with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, their body is their livelihood. They get injured, and then they're done.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the big difference with AEW, and that might attract more big stars to go there instead of WWE, because they have that total package. Not just the pay, but they have the medical benefits for not only them, but their family. And it's kind of, I think it's just a much better plan as far as Impact Wrestling went, where they were basically just doing the same exact things, private contractors.
Well, I mean, that's the wrestling world, though. That's how it's always been.
Yeah, and I think that once you get to that top level, once you get to the top company in the world like WWE, I think that you should be able to worry about that a lot less. Worrying about getting injured and losing your entire career and running out of money because you have to pay for all these medical expenses.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree there. Everyone should be provided the opportunity, especially when you have the finances. We're looking at a lot of talents, even like Legends contracts, or even talent like Cena. Like, no talent should be making. I mean, they're obviously entertainment's that thing, you supply and demand, but like it's just astronomical numbers for some of these contracts. Speaking on Moxley or Ambrose, his dislike, he got paid at the end. his first couple years, he was not getting paid. He went from, even as champion in his first time, he was like making like $50,000 a year, and then he shot up into the hundreds of thousands. But $50,000, and he was a champion, I think, in that first year as a champion. He wasn't making anything. They renegotiated contract, but he was unhappy, like you said, for a long time. Speaking of the talent pool too, and deep pockets, this is another problem. Even though, like I said, the positives and what you really emphasized there. So thank you for going into great detail on that, because that is important information about that company. With the cons and the executives of that, a lot of the executives are the wrestlers themselves. So you're talking Cody, Brandy, the Young Bucks. Omega, I believe, has shared interest in the company. Plus, there are a few more too. Forgive me if I'm missing names. But the problem, and it still exists to this day, the problem, and they're still young, they're a year old, they really wanted to emphasize on those benefits that Cody pointed out here, but they also wanted to benefit on grooming their talents, right? Showcasing their breed. Well, right now it's recycled talent from WWE. That's the other problem I have. They're focusing on...
I completely disagree with that.
But they're focusing on too much of themselves. Like, look at how many times those executives have won championships. Look at how
None
many...
of them win the main title, though.
Young Bucks have never won the tag team titles either.
You have Omega and Hangman that won the tag titles, and then Cody's had the
TNT
TV title.
So stupid.
TNT
But that's it.
That belt is
twice.
awful.
I mean, they put on some good matches with that one, though.
They
that
do.
dog collar match was pretty
I just
good.
feel there's too much focus on them. They're involved in everything. That if you really want to groom new talent, give them a push. Because I'm not watching every week. Maybe it's different, but that first 3 to 6 months when I was watching, it was them. It was their show. They're on. They're doing this, and it was like, I want other people.
This is.
I think they use them to get the name of people to come in.
Sure, and that's a fair approach. Jericho, that's why he was the inaugural champion.
Yeah, if you look at the product right now, you see guys like Orange Cassidy, which I'm pretty sure you don't like. He's one of the most over people in the world of wrestling right now.
I don't like people that wear jean on jean. That's weird.
I didn't like him at first.
I don't like people that wear jean on jean. It's weird.
Yeah, but that's his gimmick. I
get it. And he has his hands in his pockets. Like, I get it, whatever. People like him, I'm not
shit he
sold
does
on.
with just his hands in his pockets is hilarious.
Fine. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, but then you look at, like, Best Friends. You look at...
Darby Allin.
You look at Darby Allin. You look at Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. They're all grown talent within that are becoming absolute megastars in the company.
MJF.
Yeah, MJF is one of the most known heels in the world right now.
Yeah, I'm not sold on him.
Oh,
and he probably
great
won't
on
be
the mic
for another 5 years. But he's still 21 years old, 22 years old?
So yeah, he's young. He's got a long run in the industry, and this is a great platform to get, kind of going and get his feet wet and just really get experience.
His storyline right now is great too.
Like, absolutely.
Will he join the Inner Circle? Is he gonna make them turn on someone? Because
in chat they said AEW needs to get rid of the indie gimmicks.
And I completely disagree, because I think that we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think that is what is making them so big. That's what gets them about 1 million viewers a week and growing.
Well, it gets them the people who want an alternative. And I think that's what AEW is appealing towards and why they've had the success. You got people who are burned out on WWE consistently doing the same matchups. This year has not helped, but for safety, I understand why the same people are fighting the same people. But WWE before this year was doing that as well, too. So people were desperately wanting an alternative, and AEW is filling that niche.
Plus, WWE has the 50-50 booking all the time. It's like,
and
don't make them fight. Don't make them fight each other all the time.
I just want to point out that Apollo Crews has fought somebody in the Hurt Business every week for the past 11 weeks.
Right, but this may be people's request too, because the thing with the pandemic happening, if you're working and having a trusted partner who is staying isolated and you're only working with those people, you're lowering the percentage of you getting this disease. So this year specifically, I understand if there's a request for that. Does it suck for like telling a story long term and you're seeing the same thing over and over? Yes, but for safety, I understand maybe if that is their reasoning. And not to mention the lack of a depth of a talent pool right now because of all the people who were let go earlier this year.
Yep.
So speaking on that, the closing thing that I wanted to bring up as far as our conversation, we talked a lot, obviously, throughout today's show, our history of us being wrestling fans, some highlights over the years, shows, AEW in general. We talked about some current events. Let's talk about the current event. As we've seen one half of the draft already happen, we're seeing the other half tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw, and then things will settle in place on where people are moving and setting up potential feuds leading into the Rumble, if not WrestleMania for next year. What are your guys' thoughts so far on the drafts? If you have any insights on like who got picked and who went where, if you guys have a list or anything you want to highlight each person.
I know Seth went to SmackDown from Raw.
As did
Ricochet
with
stayed
Buddy
on
Murphy.
Raw.
Or not, Rey Mysterio, yeah.
And Rey Mysterio and Dom.
God, I hope I didn't want that because I didn't just drop that angle.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaways from the draft aren't necessarily because they're kind of keeping everybody together that's in a current storyline. I think the big takeaways from the draft is the New Day splitting up, and then you also have Tucker leaving Otis with the Money in the Bank, which is huge.
Is he going to cash that thing in successfully?
And I don't think so. Vince already is rumored to not like Otis.
I feel like they
which
lost the
never really
steam on
happened, but
anything he
that's-
had this year.
He did, and I think that the plan originally was to cash it in on the tag titles to make it completely new.
I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, I would have hated it too. I think I've hated the Money in the Bank for years now, since I feel like they're ruining it. They did Baron Corbin dirty, which we've talked about, and then they had an entire Money in the Bank match that Brock Lesnar wasn't even in, and he comes down and wins. I do think they're completely ruining the integrity of the Money in the Bank match in general.
The Brock boombox, though, man.
That was a great gift moment. I'll have to say that.
Yeah, he had no business coming down and just taking that thing. no
It
business.
wasn't even in the match.
No.
So that just means that anybody that's in the back can just walk out and grab the title and grab the.
They
briefcase
can.
and
They can. Who
out.
helped Carmella win the very first women's one, which ruined that great historic moment.
Exactly, and this is all since that Baron Corbin thing, because Carmella was the same year. That's why I do think that the Money in the Bank is starting to get kind of stale. You had Asuka not cash it in, but just get given a title because Becky Lynch was pregnant, which I understand that, but on another side of things, that's kind of ruining the integrity of the Money in the Bank as a whole.
I saw on social media, they said that is in the top 5 as far as pay-per-view events. They have the main 4, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and WrestleMania, and then they had the Money in the Bank. I was in shock. I was like, I don't consider that as a big of its own event. Of course, the briefcase is pretty valuable, but it's diminished, like we were saying here. So that kind of caught me off guard.
I do think it's been diminished for quite a few years now. And with Otis just holding on to that, if he doesn't have a successful cash-in, that's shocking. I really don't see the Money in the Bank staying relevant. Like next year when Money in the Bank rolls around, I don't think I'm going to enjoy it as much as I did prior, because there's no real shock value to it. You don't get the cash-ins like we've argued about the other day with Edge cashing in or Seth Rollins cashing in, those big moments. We haven't seen it in a long time.
Edge's was better, by the way, just for the record.
Nah, Seth Rollins is the best cash-in.
No. The very first one goes to Edge.
The very first one, but not the best one.
The best one as well.
We could go back and forth.
We
all
could
night.
and we
I
will,
don't
but
think
I'm
we
right.
can.
It's okay to be wrong. You'll learn that about this show. It's okay to be wrong.
What do you guys think about pay-per-views named after matches like Hell in a Cell coming up? I don't like that because they don't always have that feel that match needs it. Like Roman and Jey Uso, maybe they need it, but just throwing it in there because that's the name of the pay-per-view.
I miss
just
the
feels
days
stupid.
of it's like Vengeance or Judgment Day, and you're like, okay, these
Yeah, I
are
miss
cool
those
like things, but then they're like, but the main event will be an elimination chamber, or it will be a Hell in a Cell. You're like, oh shit, the stakes just got
Yeah,
real.
I'd
Yep.
rather it be that way.
Yeah, I
Build
don't-
to it and make it. Oh, this feud really needs the Hell in a Cell match, not just because we're having a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view and we're putting 4 matches in the cell.
Locke says
That really
Survivor
demen-
Series. I think the only ones that work are the Royal Rumble, because you know it's coming, so you can build towards it, and it's just kind of that tradition. And the Survivor Series. It's a Thanksgiving tradition, or at least it was in the past.
Those two,
Yeah, it still is.
I like. I loved the Survivor Series. It was always one of my favorites. Just get teams but like the Hell in the Cell though is just like that should only be reserved for
A
I
big
think the
feud
Hell in a
feuds
Cell
that have
culmination.
gone
Like-
so far that they have to be put in the cell because that's
Yeah, like a bad blood.
nothing else to
pay-per-view.
do.
Yep, I agree 100%. I agree. That's weird. We're all on the same page, but I agree 100%.
And the Rumble was like always my favorite of the big 4, even over Mania. Mania has the better matches, but the Rumble itself is just like my favorite type of match.
Absolutely.
30 guys coming out there and
That was the last time we all
Can
got
anything
together to
can
watch
happen.
one. This year's Rumble.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think the
Awkward silence.
I didn't hear what you said, basically.
Cody was starting something, and I just said awkward silence.
I blanked out. Completely blanked out.
So, with what to expect then for Raw's draft, the remaining so far the draft has been kind of lackluster. One of the biggest things I'm worried about is with Seth being on SmackDown, and we talked about this, Cody. Was a renewed rivalry, even though they're both heels, of Seth and Roman. That is programming I do not want to see again. And that worries me, especially with
Don't
the
make me
thin
mad
roster.
saying the Shield sucks again.
I will say that, and for the record, I do think the Shield could have been much better than it was. And I did use the words Shield sucks when you and I spoke. So for the record.
I got very angry about that.
But they weren't
like them.
great.
They were brought together and broke up and brought together too many times. It just is like, okay, you got to let them go away for a long time now before you bring them back. And then they just bring them back again and be like, it
And
wasn't
then they
long
had Kurt
enough.
Angle as a
Oh, I
replacement.
agree with that. I completely agree that they shouldn't have kept bringing them back. I don't think that Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins should have ever gotten back together. I think it should have always been how it was for about a month when they were building them coming together, where Dean was saying that he doesn't trust him and all this stuff. I think that should have just led to one more rivalry. I don't think that should have ever led to them all joining back together and
The
Kurt
first
Angle filling in because Roman gets sick.
Right. The first turn was the only thing for me that was truly exciting for their whole run. Besides like their debut to, I believe, help out CM Punk, and it was against Ryback. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, it was a triple threat.
Yeah. Who else was in that?
It was CM Punk, John Cena, and Ryback.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was interesting because you had the controversy where they hired guns. Who are these guys? If you were watching NXT, you knew. But for anyone else, you're like, what is happening here? That was interesting. And then the things that I did not care for, Roman was robotic. He was the muscle. He never appealed to me. Dean Ambrose was a wannabe Joker character, which, and let me be really specific here on the fact that these are not always the faults of the talents themselves. It's oftentimes the writers. They're doing their job. They don't have a lot of freedoms, which was why Roman has floundered throughout his entire career. And Seth had many flops as well. Cody and I spoke on the turn in character when he was with Triple H and Steph. Basically a corporate, kiss ass. And
That's Seth Rollins.
And you said that when we spoke. You said that was the best Seth Rollins, and I disagree 100%. I think personally
because you said he was whiny, which was his character.
Sure, he was appealing to being that whiny gimmick, but I think that was just a weak, whiny Seth Rollins just didn't appeal to me. I don't think that suits him and his strengths, especially for a champion. I get the story they were telling, and it was executed fine. The storytelling was on point, but I don't think that was the best Seth Rollins could be. And nor do I think that the Friday Night Messiah now, is his best shtick either. I think he had moments of brilliance in between, but I don't think those were his strengths. And then lastly, Roman has never appealed to me, even more so now. It's too little too late for his heel turn thing, even though I do see some strengths, and I'm saying, yes, this is what we should have gotten, but it's too little too late. The biggest thing that they've ever done for him is just week after week after week changing his mic promos from trying to be a comedy act to trying to do something different. And they were testing waters. But he's not The Rock. He will never be The Rock. And they need to understand that. And again, what he's doing now is finally, pun intended there, because he will eventually feud with The Rock at WrestleMania. That is where we're going with this. That's my thoughts. I think what they're doing is good, but it's too little too late to appeal to me. I'm not sold on him. I'll watch it, whatever it may be it is, but I'm not a fan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's how most people feel that did not like Roman. But I think the Roman fans that have always stuck by Roman, this is where we are kind of most excited, because we're finally getting what we've been asking for. We've been asking for Roman as a heel for years now. And now he's finally here, and it feels right.
Oh, he's good at
Him doing what he's doing with Jey Uso right now, it feels right. It feels good.
Yeah, he's good at it. And again, don't let it, I hate being in that weird stance where I'm like, I can compliment what's happening, but it's one of those things where I'm just like, this should have happened. So I'm not enjoying it like I could have been years ago. And it's just like comparing to what we wanted for Cena. We clamored for him to turn heel, and it never truly happened. The best thing that we ever got was his Word Life thing that he did. And it was the return to that, not the original run of it. Even though the original run was great. A lot of people didn't like that. But, yeah. So that has me worried. Worried about future feuds with where they're going with Bliss and The Fiend. I just never know which direction they're going to go for The Fiend, and that always worries me. He's one of my favorite characters personally. So.
And then they just shit on him so much.
I am the complete opposite with The Fiend. I just don't. I liked the build to The Fiend. I really did. I liked all the Firefly Funhouse episodes and everything like that built to The Fiend. But I think once we got to Hell in a Cell, going back to Seth Rollins, that match was just so bad, and it made both people in the match look so bad that, in my mind, The Fiend will never recover to me.
They should have never put him in the title picture so soon.
Yeah,
no, and I don't think
that was damaging.
Demons should never care about titles.
No, they shouldn't.
I know people always say that, The Fiend should be champ, but Fiend literally means demon, and I don't feel like demons should be striving for titles as much.
No, he shouldn't be a title chaser. He should torture people, and if they want the belt, he should take it from them because that's their prized possession. He needs to torture
exactly.
them. I can't believe they recovered, if they did, from that 1 year ago Hell in a Cell match. That was
bad.
It was very bad, and this was like a month, not even, before the Survivor Series event I was going to, and I was like, what the fuck are we getting at Survivor Series? And it ended up being a decent match, him versus Daniel Bryan. But I was like, man, it got me worried.
Yeah, at least they went away from the red light starting matches.
Yeah, still at Survivor Series for the one I was at, it was red lights. That was wild to watch. It was like playing a Virtual Boy if you ever played one of those. So really, that's kind of where we're at as far as the world of wrestling right now. This was a snapshot of so many things for our first episode back. As far as the schedule and rotating guests and crew on this hosting it, we don't really have the logistics fully worked out. But follow us on social media to be aware of when these will be live and where to find it. Do you guys have any closing thoughts, anything that we skipped over, anything you want to share before we kind of exit out on this?
No, I mean, I think this was exciting. I know we've pushed it back a few times to get to actually doing the podcast again, but it was exciting, and I think especially with the rotating guests, getting so many different views on wrestling as a whole, I think we got a good thing going here. I think it's very exciting, and it's very, very fun to witness.
Yeah, and if you guys are listeners out here, if you're listening to this back and it's not live, which many of you probably are, we had a small audience here with us live, which is fine. These are really designed for your listening back at a later time, whether it's on your commute or just doing whatever you do and you need something auditory in the background. This is a great thing to have. So tell your friends if they're wrestling fans. I know there's a million wrestling podcasts out there. We probably don't differ from a lot of them, but you know what? That's okay. If you're part of this community and you like wrestling, give us a listen. Tell your friends. I'm intrigued to see who we get on here as guests and what they have to say, because I think we're going to have a lot of disagreements, and that's probably what I look forward to the most. I know you and I at some point, if we don't spoil it in a chat conversation on social media before we get to the podcast, I think we'll have a better back and forth exchange. We already kind of had an understanding of people or our perspectives on things before we did this live, so reactions were
we'll
there.
Eventually hit something that
Triggers.
That triggers us that we didn't expect. Kind of like you telling me that the Shield sucks. That just shook me.
And I always have reasons. So yeah. I'm not going to just say it sucks just to be a jerk about something because somebody likes something. I usually have a reason. And being a long-term wrestling fan, I feel it's sometimes more difficult to impress people with things because you've seen so much. And then oftentimes you appeal to a certain time period of wrestling, the golden era, for whatever that golden era may be for you. And you'll constantly compare it to that, which a lot of the marks out there, it's the Attitude Era. Even though a lot of them that were super young, they probably don't even really remember it. But a lot of people now, because of the network, compare to that area. And I'll be the first to tell you, yes, it was a glorious time to be a wrestling fan, but wrestling itself during that time period wasn't really great. It was everything in between.
We had some horrible shit too.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's wrestling, right? It has its ups and downs. You go through periods where you just don't watch, but then there's that one moment, like we talked about at the beginning, something will suck you back in. And that's just, again, that's wrestling. The show,
I think all the companies need to step up their game at the women's divisions. They're all pretty bad right now.
You say that, but honestly, the thing that I tune in and look forward to the most this year has been the women's division. Specifically, even though
I'm not saying they don't have good matches, because there are a lot of good wrestlers, but the storylines, they're okay. Sasha and Bailey probably have the best one going right now. The rest of them are just like, we got this girl and we got this girl, and they're going to have a feud.
That's why I tune in, is the Bailey and Sasha program. Even though it's, I don't want to say generic, but it's a program we've seen before.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty standard storyline. Right.
I'm just saying they need more storylines for the women.
I agree 100%.
Because they have good women's wrestlers, and put them in storylines, not just throw a random 2 out there or 4 if they're at the tag team.
That's wrestling as a whole. Story. It's always reactionary, and it's hard to be a booker. I can honestly say so, not to this level of talent, but one thing I've learned, and you can check it out again. Here's another shameless self-plug. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch Nerd Acumen Wrestling with brand new content. We got Viewer Appreciation Month going on right now. Amazing cards we just had from people like Cody here this past Thursday, and then coming up on Tuesday, DKA, a talent from the show who may actually be a guest here soon on the podcast, so shout out to you. But one thing I've learned from 260 plus episodes now, it's not easy to write storyline. It's not easy to work with a bunch of different people and personalities. And it's not easy to have things make sense long term or even short term. So one thing I've learned over the 3 years of doing this show as a, quote, not really booker, but a booker for an entertainment show, I've learned to have more respect and give them a little bit more credit than I was before. But things, yes, they could be much better. Any other closing thoughts, guys?
Yeah, tune into NAW to watch your champion, Cody King.
That is right. You are the man to beat right now. So today we had the champ on the show. Actually, Trevor, you're the NEW champ. Both you guys are the champions right now. What the hell? How did we line this up? It was like it was meant to be. I have both champs.
I haven't been booked the last couple. Defended either.
You haven't. You can thank or not thank Cody for that? I don't know.
Well, I figured it was NAW, so I was only going to book NAW titles.
Well, there's super cards all month long.
Yeah, but I kind of wanted to keep it kind of neutral.
Hey, I'm not mad. It's your show. You spend money, you do what you want. So I know there are other people that are mad, but hey, they had every opportunity.
That's what I'm here for.
That's right. You're being the heel, the ultimate. You're doing your job. You're a great job at it. Both you guys are heels, too, on the show.
Yep. I don't care about the belt. I got it so somebody else doesn't have it.
Yeah, you betrayed the nerds of wrestling to do it. So
it needed to go.
So if you want to learn more about what we're talking about, join us again every Tuesday, every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at twitch.tv/Dose of Nerd Acumen. Check out the archives. They're available on youtube.com/Dose of Nerd Acumen, as well as Nerd Acumen Wrestling. Just do a Google search on that. We're on 2K19 Xbox One, hashtag NAW. If you want to be a part of that roster, we compete twice a week, like I said. Check that out. Also, check out every DNA social media page. Just search for Dose of Nerd Acumen on any social media sites. Speaking of checking out the archives, Locksteady's got something. Plug here. Trevor, do you want to plug anything? Because I know you stream for us as well.
I might be trying a new game this week. Well, I've already started the game, but it'll be new to the channel. So look for it sometime. Maybe tomorrow. I'm not promising that, but check it out. Look for it on social media.
Locke says I should check out the 4 recent episodes of nOw on the DNA YouTube channel. Why should I check out the 4 most recent? You gonna tell me, Locke? You can't leave me hanging like that, especially the listeners. Cody, you want to plug anything while you're here? Or Trevor, you got more?
Also, don't forget Locke's giving away Last of Us 2 Collector's Edition. If you subscribe to the channel, you get an entry. If you gift a sub, you get 2, and the person you gifted it to gets 1. And it's for the PlayStation 4, but you can sell it if you don't have a PlayStation 4. Take it to GameStop if you want to and get like $250 in credit.
It's not bad.
But it's worth like $100.
Also, if you have Amazon Prime, you get a free Twitch Prime sub once a month, every month. Feel free to use it on this channel. Again, twitch.tv/Dose of Nerd Acumen. Cody, any plugs since you're here with us?
No, just NAW every Tuesday and Thursday. I would love to have more people come out. Not just the roster that we have, but new talent to come on and view us and get your character on the show. I'd love to make some characters and get some new guys out there.
Cut a promo.
Indeed, we love that. We're creative. We like to have fun.
The new storylines.
Exactly. We need
some fresh
minds.
The title.
Oh, look at me.
I love the creativity of everyone. So it's been such an honor to continue doing that show. And it's going to be such an honor to do this show with you guys as well as the rotating crew and guests that we have on here. And Locke says, last but not least, you could come out and hang out when we do Lockbox on Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And he says, tell all the people about how much fun we had yesterday, Cody. That'll be your closing remark.
Yesterday we played Among Us for a couple hours. we pretty much had a full roster of people in there at all times, 10 out of 10 people. I know my wife doesn't usually watch all of the NEW shows, but it was something that she really enjoyed and is looking forward to now every Saturday. Thank you, Locke. To come out and play Among Us or Jackbox or whatever we may be doing that week and just have a great time and relax.
The hide and seek version was really fun too.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think I actually got to play because I stepped out for other people, but it was fun to watch and listen.
So yes, we're a computity. That's a new word. We're gonna go with that one. Soundbite right there. We're computity. We're a community of nerds that play other things besides wrestling. So I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, DNA, they do that nerd like wrestling show." No, we're so much more than that, and we want you guys to check it out because I bet you there is something for everyone, and you'll find it on our YouTube channel or live with us. We have over 700 videos available now. Tons of content. We also have the Dosage podcast where we just talk about nerd things in general. That's coming back hopefully sometime soon. I'm in the process of moving, so once I get that sorted out, that'll make its return. Plus so much more. If you guys think of something that you want us to talk about ever, whether it be wrestling or not, anything in general, or if you want to see us play a specific game, reach out to one of us. Someone will play it, or someone will talk about it, or someone will do it, whether it be a challenge. I just ain't doing that one chip challenge, sorry. Not sorry. Locke will do it, though.
Oh, it's okay.
Trevor already did it, so. But anyways, I want to thank you guys, both Cody and Trevor, for coming out today. And then that is all I have. So until next time, stay nerdy, wrestling nerds. Ooh,
Nerds.
yeah!
Later, guys.